Good morning. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the art of storytelling in art. I got this hat in Amsterdam years ago, by the way. Um, it's always been there. Images are storytelling. It's like, how much do we think about it, though, today as artists? I think at some point we ultimately come to this realization. I don't believe it was ever really discussed during undergrad in art school. At least I don't remember anyone specifically talking about it. Maybe if you're in the English department or creative writing department, storytelling obviously is an extremely critical component of those types of studies. And I don't know that early on I really thought about storytelling when I was learning to draw and paint and wanted to paint. At first, it seemed, I was really interested in seeing how well I could capture the image that interested me, whether it be a street scene, a train car over top of a city on a train bridge, something like that, a landscape. I was a big fan of, Andrew Wyeth growing up. And then later on, I thought I did pretty well. I could draw things one-to-one scale. Realism was a big focus. I never wanted to get into really hyper realism, but I, attempted it a few times. And I realized later that it really wasn't saying what I wanted to say, visually as an artist. They didn't really come across as, stories. They were something that, oh, I imitated well. I saw it, was able to, translate it into some sort of, visual piece that was interesting, but what was it really saying? Um, this piece behind me, not necessarily this one in particular, but the style of it, with some of the other figurative work I've done and the abstract work I've done. Those things I realized later said more about what I wanted to say as an artist. Instead of writing it down or, creating a song or something, it came out in those forms. It was sort of like memories and interpretations of things around me that I had sort of pulled out from life and ended up having it reflected, on canvas. And, what does that look like, in the, you know, human psyche, brain interpretation, creative result. Um, this is what it looks like coming out of me. There are a lot of storytellers, a lot of ways to tell stories, um, just sort of being somewhat funny, but this album by Radiohead, it's very popular. Tom York, great storyteller. This is telling stories. This novel, The Coma Machine, was written by my cousin up in Canada. One of these subplots has to do with, I believe, the aftermath of Toronto being nuked. No issues there. The Coma Machine. Interesting read. So, often going forward, I realized that some of the work in these series that I've done, again, especially with the figurative work lately, it does seem to primarily for me reflect some of the aforementioned, but also at the end of the day, wanting to create an interesting image. Sorry, I'm looking at some of the pieces here out of view of the camera lens. The strong composition, the imagery, the use of color, marks, brush strokes, adding charcoal drawing into the works, things like that. And then sort of the story for me kind of develops as the piece kind of moves along and develops over days, weeks, or even months. I often start out with a emotion in mind, a feeling of something, a takeaway from something that I want to express. And it takes a while for me to resolve that. It's like, what does that look like? Is it the piece, the image evoking what it is that I'm thinking and feeling? And then how do I say it, on canvas in this case? So that's sort of the process for me. And I generally know when it's finished, when the piece feels strong, and when it's said enough of what I wanted to say. Um, do I always get to that point? I think so. And then there's the point where, you just walk away from it. Is there something else that could be done? It's possible. But time will tell. So anyway, um, that's it today for storytelling. Um, do you think about storytelling when you're beginning a piece? Or are you just interested in capturing an image and interpreting it in your own way, in your own style? How much is storytelling a part of what you do? How important is it? Where do you draw your stories from? Is this something you really consider? Um, so anyway, have a good day.